Hey guys, M12, Warthog here. I'm back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about something. You wanna know what we're going to be talking about? This is going to be talking about strategy stuff. Not really per se a strategy guide, as I already did one. I actually played through a game just for fun, and then I did one that was more strategy focused on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and all that kind of stuff, the more detailed information about it. But today we're going to be talking about something. You've probably seen me play a lot of games, such as Civilization on Strategy Guide, Warlords 2, Rise of Demons. I've done Age of Conquest 4, and Risk Factions, which I've played the most out of all these games with over 800 hours clocked in on the game. If you don't believe me, I took a screenshot of my war record and I posted it to Twitter. Link in the description if you want to follow me there. That'd be nice, because then you get to find out when I post all these videos and whatnot. But so I wanted to talk to you about one thing in particular for this video, and that is not all the games, but most of the games. A consistent strategy I use is outnumber at the point of attack. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why is that so important? What's so important, and why is it so effective to outnumber at the point of attack? Well, to start out with this, we're going to talk about the person who invented this strategy. A person who has a series of wars named after him. A French military leader slash dictator slash ruler, whichever you choose to view him as, Napoleon Bonaparte, who was born on Corsica at the time that it was occupied by France, rose up through the ranks after leaving officer school and took the French out of what was known as the bloodiest time in their history, I would imagine, of the French Revolution, and led an army and conquered almost all of Europe. All of it. Almost all of it. Except for Russia, but there is a reason for why that failed, but pretty much he won battles where he was outnumbered overall, but always at the point of attack he outnumbered them as the way of positioning his armies and troops. So why was it so effective, and why is it so effective in games such as Risk Factions and Age of Conquest 4? Well, simply put, Age of Conquest 4 and Risk Factions, they use it based on numbers, so you get more rolls and more armies, means you can roll more dice when you attack people, although tie still goes to the defender, and you still get defensive bonuses in Age of Conquest 4 if you have fortifications there, or if you have a leader on the defending territory, then they get a bonus for the person defending with that leader, as well as an additional bonus if they also have anything else there. So then again, I like the idea that Napoleon went with, as he saw a major flaw in what everyone did with their armies and how it was placed, because around that time, somewhat newish, early-ish, firearms were invented. No, they're not like the automatic weapons. You just hold down the trigger and it fires a bunch of bullets. These are the kind of weapons that you could only fire several times a minute, not multiple times a second. These were the ones that you had to load from the front, and they were difficult to use sometimes, and it required training, a little bit more training in some cases than others, depending upon which type you were using. And if they jammed, you pretty much had only one way. You couldn't really fix it right then and there because there's no interchangeable part. That came later, I believe. Maybe it was around close to the end of the Napoleonic Wars. But mainly, the reason this is so effective is because not only when you outnumber at the point of attack can you overpower, but you can fire at more people at once. Because if you have Army A with 100 people, and they each can fire, as say, about 3 times a minute with their version of a flintlock rifle, and Army B has the same type and the same amount of training, but they have 200 men. They can effectively are more likely, despite the fact that despite these type of rifles are very inaccurate, have a higher chance of taking out more of your guys with one shot or blow, greatly reducing your numbers before you can do any good deal of damage to them. Though I would imagine that not all battles went perfectly smoothly. Of course, there are some casualties, but then again, that's how wars and battles go. Then again, he constantly used this and it constantly won. Now, of course, this was not effective during naval battles, and while air battles such as Battle of Britain, and all that stuff, not really mattered because he mostly fought on land, and any naval battles he did when he lost, most of them, I would say, most of them, is a good accurate number, if not all of them. I don't know every exact naval engagement, but the most important ones were talked about in class and what I've learned in school, and he didn't win much of them. But then again, at the same time, I believe it's more based on technology and the capabilities of your ships, because they were so much wider range of capabilities that ships could have, and ships at that time were designed to do one thing and they'd be good at it. If a ship tried to do something that it used and it wasn't good enough, then it wasn't going to work. And also probably why this does not work. Now, on the other hand, I'd also like to say that I do believe that outnumbering at the point of attack not only could give you a greater advantage when in direct combat, assuming you're on the same level, but it could also mean that you could probably make an army and rout the army and scare them with numbers. Although this is not exactly gonna happen every single time, and it's more about the discipline and the training that they have. For an example, the Battle of Marathon, which, if you've ever run a marathon, it comes from this, because it was exactly like 26.4 or 2, or how many ever miles it is away from the city of Athens, was pretty much Persian army wanted to invade Greece, and the Greek soldiers formed a bunch of together to form a bunch of into one big giant formation, and used a strategic withdrawal from their phalanxes that they had. The ones in the middle were a little bit thinner and pulled them back, and they pretty much continued to push on, and then were attacked from 3 sides, and then they all freaked out and ran. Most of them drowned because they ran backwards directly into what was a swamp and so forth. So ultimately, in the end, yes, it was good and bad to yes, it can be good and bad to use it if you're gonna go in there hoping that the retreat is not always something reliable in strategy games, but it really depends on the situation here. But another thing that also made this way better than almost anything else was the fact that this tactic was not usually used to being used by anyone at the time, and by doing this, it made it revolutionized and changed how we see things with war. Now, the reason I'm playing this game in particular civilization is because we're utilizing this tactic in the beginning if we engage in combat early on, but if I play my diplomacy right, hopefully that will not happen. But on the other hand, I'd like to also say that maybe it won't be like that later on. And most importantly, later on, you're going to have some people who have riflemen and some people who have modern infantry. At that point, it becomes who can outnumber at the point of attack, because if I have more defense power than your attacking power, then I outnumber at the point of attack, and it doesn't matter how many armies you shove at me, I can defend them off. So at that point, you gotta take into focus about using what is pretty much outnumbering at the point of attack, but doing it in a fast way, essentially doing blitzkrieg, which was used by Germany in World War II. Now, on the other hand, if you know you're on, like, even ground, outnumbering at the point of attack, or whoever has the greatest amount of troops, is usually going to be a good idea as well. Now, the only downside, though, is if you use it too much, eventually someone's going to catch on, and eventually they're going to try and draw you out into a trap or something. So, if possible, if you feel like you're going to do that and it's not going to go so well, always using retreating and fighting on a battlefield you're familiar with is always a good idea. I mean, it's not entirely the best idea in your current situation. It might be the best idea in your current situation, but it's always a good idea in my opinion. Alright. So, aside from this, I think not only not protect, I actually think that yes, there are weak points to this, and yes, if you don't have enough units to hold a certain front, it leaves the army they're using to outnumber at a point of attack open and exposed to some extent. There are other downsides to this as well, but ultimately, in the end, when applied right, can be very good. So, what other tactics could we talk about that use a lot of numbers? Well, General Grant, who was the eighth command of the Union Army in the Civil War, said that he would kill 3 of his men if it meant killing one of the enemies. Now, many people did not like the fact that he said this, but on the other hand, he made a point that we have more numbers than them, and instead of trying to outmaneuver the South, which, by the way, they had better leadership and they had better well-trained men. Although some of them went on to say that because of how much independency they relied on with the state and how much power the state government had at the time, which I believe some could argue, and some could agree with me, that was probably more than the national government at the time. Most people would stick with their state rather than with the national government. So if one state joined one side, then they joined that side with their state rather than whatever the national government said, which technically, if you think about it, once you succeed, you're not part of that government anyway, and you're part of another state. But then again, it is written that states are allowed to succeed, I believe. I'm not sure where exactly, but I definitely know that's something that they're allowed to do. And, well, ultimately, what it boils down to is the tactic that was used was war of attrition, which pretty much means you definitely head straight on to an enemy and you fight them. You're gonna lose numbers. They're gonna lose people. It's going to have more troops. Now, of course, if you knew all the stuff that went on during that time period and which side had access to what and how things went, you would know that this tactic pretty much gave the victory over to pretty much gave it to the North when they started using this tactic. Now, although it may not be the most perfect tactic because you're going to lose men and whatnot, and it's usually just not the best thing to do is just to go throw your army at the other army, see if they can win, is usually good if you're on a good standing point and on the same level like other armies, like Napoleon in terms of technology and the weapons that they're capable of using. Although, at the time period when Napoleon was using his outnumber at the point of attack strategy, his troops were well more trained than anyone else. Almost most of the people that they fought. I would say some of the grenadiers or the experienced soldiers were usually put into a unit so that they would be known as the special forces unit in some cases that would come to back up serious situations or take on the heavy hitting situations because, well, they had the experience to do this because they've been fighting for a while. So those grenadiers usually had as much training as the line infantry in Napoleon's army, which are your basic everyday average soldier. The guy who's on the front line firing their rifle off is your line infantry. They don't have they're not trained to do special stuff and whatnot. If a unit's trained to do special training and whatnot and take on special types of jobs and all that kind of stuff, well then, yeah, they're not really a line infantry as it's your normal infantry unit doing what they are designed to do kind of thing. And they were apparently well more trained than all the other ones, which also gives them an advantage. So, clearly, you're still getting an advantage, and this can be more effective even if your advantage is not necessarily numbers. Can you still apply the outnumber at the point of attack thing? Then again, if you don't have enough numbers to outnumber at any point at any attack, then you've probably already lost the battle. So, in conclusion, is outnumbering at the point of attack a valid strategy, and do you think it would be good compared to some of the other ones that are somewhat similar to it? I would say, at the time period it was used, it was probably the best thing ever invented in terms of strategies. Nowadays, probably not the best thing to do, because we got weapons that can vaporize armies in seconds, so maybe not. But as technology evolves, so do strategies have to. So, in conclusion, outnumber at the point of attack is good if it's used in a valid situation, in a situation where it's designed to work. And it may not always be the best situation, but that's just how it is. So, I'm going to end it off here with me putting my second scene in a somewhat crappy place because it started out in a somewhat crappy area in civilization. But by the time I'm done with this, I will have used War of Attrition at one point. More than, maybe not, but most likely I will probably have used the ability to outpower or overpower at the point of attack more, along with a little bit combination of tanks to do the lightning warfare aspect, known as Blitzkrieg, later on, as all of these strategies have their own strengths and weaknesses. If there is a specific strategy you want me to dive deep into and talk about, and whether or not it's good or not, for a strategy guide, or more or less a guide on whether or not you should use this strategy versus the other types of strategy guides I do where I take a scenario and show you how to get through using a certain strategy, feel free to leave suggestions in the comment section down below. I like talking about this strategy stuff, and I like playing strategy games, and I like to know what you think of this. Your, your feedback will be always appreciated, as always, in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys later in another video.